Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We always love to have you watch our shows. We are here tonight with Rebecca Walker, a prominent feminist and author of several best-selling books. She's a speaker who has appeared at over 400 universities, literary conferences, and corporate campuses. And she's coming with us to talk about her fantastic new book, Women Talk Money. It's a very important topic, which is unfortunately very hush-hush, and that's exactly what her book is set out to do: break the taboo with fantastic, bold essays. She's joined by Helena Andrews. She's a senior writer for the Washington Post. She covers culture, race, politics. She's written about the vice president, and she has a deep and very good understanding of what it is to be a Black woman. And then also joined by Jonica Rivers. She is also working in writing, editing, and curating. She is a co-founder of Artists We Will Be. It's a creative pair and a collective that produces anthologies, media projects, and that are all centering around the interior lives and creative process of Black women artists. So, without further ado, let's bring these fantastic women on screen. Hello.
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 Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here. This is an amazing topic, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say.
Thank you. We're very excited to be here, or at least I am.
I am very
to see
excited.
my sisters in crime and conversation with me. So this is wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm going to hop off, and you guys continue to have your fantastic chat.
Okay.
So,
Now
ladies,
our
this
faces
is.
got big.
I know we just got big all of a sudden. It's like, whoa.
It looks like we're on FaceTime.
It
It does. I
does.
love that.
Yeah, I love FaceTime. So this is sort of a reunion of sorts. A decade ago, we were on stage at Busboys and Poets on 14th and V, and now we are on the Busboys and Poets YouTube and Facebook Live. Times have changed, but also nothing has changed. So, Rebecca, what motivated you to bring this anthology together, and why did you feel women needed to talk money?
Well, first of all, hey, everybody out there. I'm so happy you came to hang out with us for a little while. I know life is crazy. I know you're busy. I know your energy is really limited and finite. And it means a lot to me and to these beautiful women that you chose to come and spend your time and energy with us talking about these subjects. So welcome. And I hope to, give you something here in this space and see you again in the future. And if I've seen you in the past, welcome back. I'm happy to talk about this new book, Women Talk Money. I decided to do it in the early 2000s, well, 2008, when we were in the middle of the Great Recession. And I was in this little Facebook private group with these two women and many other Black women, women of color. And we were all talking about what was going on with our finances. In addition to celebrating, Obama's inauguration, we were all feeling the effects of the recession and trying to figure out how we were going to make our next moves. Were we going to start businesses? What kind of side hustle were we going to start, cultivating? Folks were really, really facing this moment. And because we were all in the same boat in some ways, we were all, in different socioeconomic positions, but we were still all dealing with financial anxiety. I think we were much more honest about our experiences. So instead of being silent about them, we were just like, listen, what are we going to do? I'm having this money problem. I'm having, and the kind of the veils came off, and there was an honesty to the conversations that was very important to me. And it cemented our bonds with one another. And it occurred to me that if we all were more honest about our financial situations and our struggles and our histories, that we could support each other better, right? Because we could understand what we were going through, and that as a whole, women would be uplifted, and not just financially, not just about like solidifying your retirement account or investing. Not all that is real, but also just in the space of releasing some of the emotional and psychological trauma that so many of us are carrying around money, be that shame, guilt, fear, confusion, a sense of overwhelm, um, lack of knowledge, whatever it is that we could, once we start to talk about it, we could release some of it and process it so that we could have like an open channel to begin our relationship with money again in a new and fresh and healthy way. So this book was really a way to further that conversation and create a space, a safe space for women to start to come to voice about their experiences, and know that they're not alone.
The book is right on time for me. I'm one of those, precarious, peripatetic Black women creatives. And, my last living parent passed away 2 years ago and decided I should be the matriarch of my family. So I now am in this thing where I'm like responsible for all this stuff and like a home that I need to renovate. And, I'm having to think about money in some very different ways than I've thought about it for the past 39 years. Rebecca, do you want to read an excerpt from Women Talk Money?
I don't want to read an excerpt.
Okay.
I mean, you all can imagine what I wrote. I wrote, how we all need to talk about money, how it'll change the world.
Absolutely.
And just so you know, everybody out there who hasn't read it, people wrote about so many different things. Daisy Hernandez writes about, getting into credit card debt and what that means within her Puerto Rican cultural family and value system. Nina Rivera writes about not being able to live in her community because of environmental racism, and she can't literally breathe because of what's happening in the air, and having to understand that because of her privilege, she's able to move into a place where she can breathe, and she becomes an activist, all the way through to, Marnie Masuda writing about becoming a widow, not once, but twice, and the things that she learns about what she has to do to manage the money and to process the grief all at the same time when you're in that position. To, my dear friend Latham Thomas writing about how, as a Black woman, her first experience with money was to watch her mother, who was a real estate agent, go in to cash her real estate commission check at a bank in Oakland and have the teller say that, you couldn't possibly have earned this check honestly, and call the police on her. And so she had to experience her mother literally being dragged out of the bank for having money, for having made money. And that's the experience of many Black women in this country, that we are told in subtle and not so subtle ways that we don't deserve to have money, that we somehow got money in a way that was not legitimate, that we that we we should be either overly grateful that we have any, or it's unclear whether we deserve it. I mean, all of these different messages, and so I mean, there's so many different pieces, I can't even sum them up, but you get a sense of all of the different perspectives, people really trying to work through what money is meaning to them in their lives right now, and the messages that they got and how they're trying to unpack them. And I am with you, Jonica, before we go to Helena, and she's going to talk about her whole situation. But I am with you right now. As I get older, I find myself in this position where I'm both navigating the financial situation of my elders, right, and my child and my family right now. So I'm having to really make some very intense decisions almost every day about how I'm going to deal with things like legacy, how I'm going to be messaging what is good, how to healthily use and steward money, for my child, so to have my child watch me handling not just my money, but the money of my ancestors and my foremothers and fathers. It's a very interesting process of having to be extremely conscious at every moment of what I'm doing and what I'm acting out in these decisions? What are we prioritizing? Why are we prioritizing it? And so, yeah, so I really relate to what you brought to the table. And I think that's a very important discussion. And I don't think anyone in the book really talks about that, though they do talk about issues of inheritance, what happens when you inherit things. They do talk about, teaching your children about money, but it's a real situation. At every time in your life, you're dealing with money in a different way. And so as you get older and are in our position, or you're not older necessarily, but in our position where you're dealing with families and generations, it gets even more complicated.
Yeah, my situation is very complicated because I was raised by my maternal grandparents, who had 6 daughters of their own that they skipped over for me. So that in and of itself creates, so I'm literally the baby of the babies, right? But so I'm actually managing people who are twice my age.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, within a Black family.
Woo!
So it.
And how are you handling that?
Well, I'm a Scorpio, so we're born we're born for these fights. So yeah, but it is intense. And as a person who does not have children, and so I've sort of avoided managing people, right? And so here I am, and it's like, oh, this thing I thought I was maybe sort of running away from, I'm just inheriting it in a different way. So like I have a younger cousin who has a 2-year-old little boy. She's a single mother. And so I'm now helping her enroll him into pre-K3, which is not a task I necessarily imagined on my to-do list, and then sort of mentoring her because I want her to be okay, because her being okay takes a little burden off of me. If you're stable on your own, then I don't have to worry about you. So I'm, to the mamas, I've taken on a form of, I guess, what our foremothers call other mothering. So now I'm other mothering out here. So Helena, the last time we gathered in person, you were single, and now you are married. You have 2 babies, and you are giving the world an offering this year in the form of your 3rd book, The Mamas. What has being a mama and also writing The Mamas, taught you about women, specifically Black women, and money?
Oh Lord Jesus, so much. I mean, I think everything that we're talking about in terms of how you inherit generational trauma around money, and also just how that is it becomes an integral part of your personality, right? Like I was raised by a single Black lesbian woman, right? So all that we were, if you're doing a totem pole, we were very low on it in terms of the amount of money my mother made over time. But I never felt, and I wrote about this in my first book, Bitches in New Black. I remember I was being babysat by someone, and I remember this clearly. I might have been 6 years old, and this girl, she was maybe 13, was like, would you consider yourself low class, middle class, or upper class? I will never forget this. And I said to her, I was like, oh, middle class, right? Because that's what I thought. We lived in one room, like not a studio. It was literally like one room. The bathroom was down the hall that we shared with everyone who lived in this apartment building. We were poor, right? We were very poor. And she was just like, no, boo, like you're poor, basically. And that was the first time anyone had said something like that to me. I was 6. I will never forget it for as long as I live. And my mother always made sure that although we did not have a lot of material things, I always felt very rich in other ways. And she figured out, I went to a uppity private school in downtown Los Angeles for most of my primary and secondary education. I went to Columbia University undergrad. I went to Northwestern for grad school. Like I never felt, but at the same time, like I am someone who will like never put more than $10 on a Smart Trip ever. Right? Because you can't eat Smart Trip rides, honey. You might have to go to the grocery store. Like I'm someone who like opens the refrigerator and looks at all the food in it, and that lowers my anxiety because our food is filled, our refrigerator is filled with food. But I hate to go to Costco because I think it's a waste of money buying in bulk, even though it probably isn't. But I always think, we got a bunch of like, what if we need to pay the light bill, but we got a bunch of Cheetos? Like, that will never leave me. I am 42 years old. That type of stress will never leave my body. And so what I've learned now, and being married, having daughters whose life experience is so different from mine. They're growing up in a 2-parent household. They are growing up with 2 parents who are professionals, who every 2 weeks someone deposits money into my bank account. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I always think like, but I don't want rich kids. I don't want these kids to think they got it, but they do. And my husband will be like, but why not though? Why don't you want to, I want them to feel secure always, and not have the type of insecurity, stress over food, shelter, all those things that I had as a child. Never want those for our babies, and they won't experience that because of the type of people we are. But there are certain parts of how I grew up that I absolutely want to impart. Like the other day, I think my oldest daughter is not even 5. She turns 5 next week. And she asked me for something. And I was like, that costs money, right? I forgot what she asked me for, like a Pop-It or something that's like $1. And I was like, that costs money, right? I was like, how do you make money, Sally? She's like, you have to work. And I was like, okay, so what can you do? She's not 5, okay? She's not even 5. I was like, so what can you do to make money? She was like, well, maybe I can do something around the house. Can I do something around the house? Can I help you? And I was like, maybe you can. Like, it's just, and I feel like she should have those types of thoughts, right? I think that she should be raised that way. But again, she's not even 5 years old. And I think also to myself, like, this is not, I think, what people are teaching their kids in other households, right?
Yeah.
Who grew up privileged, who grew up with all the things all the time. Like, they're not even thinking of that. But in my mind, I'm always like, I don't want these girls out here not knowing that they got to work for what they get. But she's 4, so it's this constant thinking. And then when you are a mother, especially in DC or in any place, and I'm sure there are a zillion people on this call who have the same experience in a gentrified neighborhood where your kids, our kids go to public school, but there's folks in the $1 million flip who live next to us and our little former group house, who are so different from mine and have grown up different from mine. But my kid is playing with that kid on the playground, and then the values that are rubbing off on her because of that, because in these gentrified neighborhoods all over the country, people who are vastly different socioeconomically, are together, and we're constantly trying to be aware of that and what the girls are learning and thinking about, not only money, but also class and how that plays into it. We have and I'll stop talking in a minute. Like, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, another Black mom whose daughter is very good friends with my daughter. And I had picked her daughter up and we were talking, and her daughter said to me, she was like, oh, our cleaners came today. And I was like, oh, okay, because we also have cleaners, right? And she was like, oh, our cleaners came today. Our house is so nice. And then I had said this to my friend. I was like, oh, she told me the cleaners came. She's like, oh my God, I don't want her to, she was like, I don't want her to know we have cleaners. Like, she doesn't want her daughter telling people that they have folks coming to their home to clean their home, right? Even though we all, again, you're privileged. A lot of us do, right? Because if she's not coming to clean my home, literally it is just going to be a pigsty because I work every day. I can't do it. But we're also, again, there's this thing turning in your head about the fact that you are having to outsource most likely to other poor women of color that you could be doing. And it's just all this stuff is swimming in our head. And this is another Black woman saying that. She's like, I don't want her to know that we have cleaners. And it's just like, we do. Yes. She sees them, of course, right? But it's like, what are we teaching them? What are we teaching them about these women? And what are, for me, it's just when my daughter sees the cleaner, I was like, that's Miss Letitia. Okay. And the work she does in this home is very important, because if Miss Letitia wasn't doing this, then it wouldn't be done. Mommy can't do it. You respect Miss Letitia often, and you clean up before she comes, by the way.
Exactly.
We don't leave a pigsty for Miss Letitia. But it's all of that is like swimming in my head constantly. And it's something that I think will never, I don't think I'll ever get rid of. I will always feel like the kid who didn't have enough. And I still feel like the adult who, even though she has way more than she could have imagined as a child, I still feel like, but this could be taken away any moment.
Yes.
And that's deep. And it's something that permeates so many parts of your life, especially I think when you're parenting little ones and thinking about the types of messages you're sending them. That was a long answer.
Amen. No, that was a great answer. And I deeply relate to that as a mother. I'm always trying to figure out, how to balance the fact that my grandparents, we're second generation, college educated. My grandmother on my father's side worked 6 jobs as a bookkeeper, raised 3 kids as a single mother, put them all through graduate school. You know what I mean? My mother came from her parents being sharecroppers in the deep South and having nothing, no security, no safety, displaced from their homes constantly. So I always feel the sense of the ancestors and the work that they had to do and the vulnerability they had. And I think that has given me a sense of respect for money, a sense of an understanding of what's important, which is home safety, ownership of home, and control as much as possible of where you live, a focus on education, right, for our children. Um, and I really want them to understand where they've come from because I grew up, my financial situation changed so much over the course of my life. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, by the time my son came, there was a tremendous amount of privilege. And so to make sure that he understands that it's not that far away, that this span, that our family spans the whole range, the spectrum, and that our decisions can take us to any place on that spectrum. If you are not taking care of business, we could be right back there, and that's not the goal. At the same time, we don't want to just go all up into privilege and forget about all of the people that we are really related to, fundamentally. And it is such a challenge, and I want him to know those things, and I want him to be prepared, as a Black man in America. I want him to know how to deal with the stock market, to invest wisely, to feel like he's a really active participant in that realm, to understand real estate, to understand savings, all of the things that give him financial literacy, in addition to giving back to the community. How is he going to spend his money? How is he going to negotiate money with a future partner, with a girlfriend? It's a lot, parenting. And I have the same thing with cleaners. We definitely have house cleaners because I could not handle life without the lovely, fabulous women who come help me in this house. And I tell him, we have these beautiful these women that we respect deeply who come in here and give their time and energy to making sure our house runs smoothly, and we have to respect them. And you need to clean your room so that they can clean your room for you after your first time, and those are, I think we really flesh those moments out, I think, as women of color in particular, because we understand we're so much closer. My grandmother
Absolutely.
she cleaned white people's houses for my mother's whole life, practically.
And so did my mom. And so did my mom.
And so did your mom. And so when we see those women come in, we are connected, And I think for me, as I've seen my mother, the challenge is often how to respect a boundary between us, because sometimes I just want to be too close to them. Like I'm like, it's like, I get it. I'm your sister in all this, but it's like, they don't always want me to be my sister and, their sister and all this. And it's a very complex emotional space and psychological space to navigate. And so I really hear you as a parent. It's very tough because we want our kids to know how to be functional, how to navigate this system, and also resist this system at the same time. Their money, like one of the great pieces in the book is by a very wealthy woman, Leah Hunt Hendricks, who's the daughter of one of the wealthiest women in the country, and she uses her money to fund BLM, to fund Occupy Wall Street, to fund social change movements. And so it's like we want to teach our kids, yes, okay, make money, be sophisticated about money, but then what are you going to do with it? Really, really, what are your values? What are yes, and so it's like, yes, and I'm about to write this check to Stacey Abrams, gubernatorial campaign, and this is what mommy does with money, and I expect you to do some of this with money when it's your moment, to do it. So I think that's parenting and money is deep, and we
Yeah.
want to protect them from it sometimes too. We don't want them to have to think about it, and yet they do,
Mm-hmm. All
And
the
Ned
time.
thinks about it so much, he just asks me straight out, okay, so how much money did you make for doing that? And and what did you do with it? And it's like, okay, honey, mama taught you that this is all good to talk about, but you don't need to know every single thing. But yeah.
But it's great. I feel like he feels, I hope that the girls get to that place of wanting to ask, like, yes, what are the dollars and cents, honestly, about all of it? Because even in researching my book, because it was a lot about class and understanding how class plays a huge role in how we parent and how you've moved up in class, right? And all the studies that have come out in the history of our mobility as people of color is that, we are the most precarious, right? You might move from this class to this class, but we can slip. And it often happens, right? Our upward mobility is not guaranteed. And I think, so we all live, especially those of us who came from a different place, we live with this anxiety, even if we didn't have kids, that is, you could slide down that ladder at any time. And it's just like, what's going to send you there, right? Whether it's a different job or doing, so sometimes you don't even take big risks. And I think that that's something that I've had to think about myself. And Jonica can speak to this too. I always, I was a freelance writer for a really long time. But when I was sitting down and thinking about getting married, we had a conversation and I was just like, I can't freelance anymore. Like I need to I need to have health insurance. I need someone to pay this thing, and that is what led me to my job at the Post. And I've been at the Post now almost 8 years. And when I first got there, I was like, oh, no. It's a child. No, what? Go tell daddy it's a child. It's a child. It's a child. Hold on. I'll show
child.
I will show everyone a child very quickly.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
She's very upset about it.
Hi, baby.
Hello.
Oh my God. You are
Rob!
good. That's the perfect age.
It is a fun age. And now she's daddy is supposed to be watching her. Robert! And the child is here.
That's okay.
Listen, we're all home. This is how it happens.
Mommy.
Really?
Let's ask her what she thinks of money.
Yes.
What do you think of money, honey?
Robin, she's looking at photos of herself. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, forget it.
Thank you very much. But I mean, this is, they asked me what I do and who I do it for. But I was saying, when it comes to, 1 second, please. When it comes to risks, career-wise, I make less of them now than I would have wanted to, because money is such a factor in my head. I see Jonica and the word Jonica, and I want that life. I want that life. I want to go to Italy in 2 weeks.
Honey, I know Jonica's
talk
living
about it,
hard.
Jonica.
No.
Yes,
so
talk about it.
Let's talk about this, because I'm very interested in the precarious lives of Black women who have chosen what Rebecca's mother wrote about in Search of Our Mother's Gardens. Like, I must do work, I'm involved in work my soul must have, right? But that also sometimes means my bank account doesn't have things.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm building an ecosystem, right, around my talent and my ideas, which then really means you have like 55 jobs, right? You're thinking, you're writing. I still have to live. I need an agent. Nobody's taking taxes out of these, 1099 gigs. there are 5-figure months and, 4-figure months and 0-figure months.
Mm-hmm.
And having to manage like yourself, which then you almost become a company, if you will, which sounds icky because you're doing work to avoid working for a company. And then how does this all age? And I'm now hitting that wall where I'm like, oh, there's this thing called retirement that I have to think about. Or in my mind, I feel like, I can be Faith Ringgold. I can produce work and 95.
I mean, you could, but that's real, and I think I've learned a lot in the last 10 years about being a freelance artist, because I worked freelance my whole life. I mean, all three of us actually, as a writer, that was it. And I had to learn about incorporating and getting my S corp together and my LLC together so that I could fund my retirement account and I could get all the tax breaks that all these white guys have been getting forever, and all these little loopholes that they don't tell us about, and how to graduate from that space of just winging it and just like running after every single thing that came in, out of this sense of anxiety, to being like, okay, let me plan this out. Let me understand how this system works, because it has not been designed for us and nobody has explained it to us. So I'm going to go figure it out, and slowly adjusting my infrastructure, making sure that I brought together a good team to help me manage this position. And it's not, I never shy away from anymore, the idea that I am the company, this is, it is my empire, and it is RW Inc. And, and I have to run it that way. And I hope that I'm going to work, for as long as I can, but I also want to try to make sure that, that I won't have to until I die, like I won't have to be out there, trying to come up with some good ideas to share with people when I'm like 80, because, I don't know what else I got going on up here. So, I think that it's very important to think about these things. And I wish I had thought about it a little bit younger, when I was maybe like around 35, 40, I could have thought about starting, starting an S corp, starting to pay myself, so that then my salary, I paid my self-employment tax on that, and I could keep, part of the salary in the business account, and then I could open a 401k for myself, and then the business side. I mean, all these different things that would have set me up very differently, but I didn't know anything about it. It was completely shrouded, which I think is very true for many, many women of color and people of color in general, and people who just have been marginalized from the conversation around money, because it is so set up to benefit those who have it and to make sure that they are able to keep it. And they talk to their children about how to maintain their wealth, and I think that's something that is really important to me. And we used to talk about this in BP, the idea of multi-generational wealth as Black people. How are we cultivating that consciously? Because we do understand that we can lose everything in a generation, and we have to really fight that, because we haven't been prepared to really focus on building it over generations. And I think this is part of it, these conversations and helping people to understand that, like Audre Lorde says, your silence will not protect you. Not talking about money is not going to make it so that you have enough one day. It's not going to make it so that you're healed from your trauma around money and the feeling that you don't deserve it, or the feeling that you have too much, or whatever the feeling is. Talking about it is the thing that's going to get you to a healthier place, I hope, if you're talking about it with the right people. Start with talking about it with yourself and the people you love. But, it's the silence and the lack of real insight and training that is really debilitating, for us in our communities. And we don't deserve that. We work too hard. When you look around, my son, whenever I tell my son, I said, well, we just hired a sister for that. And he's like, oh, thank God. He's like, if Black women get it done. He's like, he is very clear. He's like, y'all, I have yet to see a Black woman not come in and handle it, in a deep way. And I think, the more that we can bring that sense of competence that we display in every other way to this field, to this space of financial security, the more we will rise individually and as a family and as a community, So super important.
So I have
think
a question for both. Oh, sorry.
No. I would just going to add to that. I feel like what I love about your book and this book, it's not prescriptive in this way. It's not a Suze Orman book. It's not
Right.
like, oh, let me teach you how to do X, Y, and Z, because a lot of us I know I shy away from that type of stuff. But it's understanding that you're not the only one. I think that's part of what is surrounding this, one, not wanting to talk about it, but also this shame that you don't understand it like everybody else does. Because as you say, these other folks are having these conversations with their kids at a very young age. Their kids are understanding this. They're understanding investment and growth and all of that. And because we may not have had that conversation, that's not all of us. It's a lot of rich Black people out there too who have been having all these conversations, right? But for those of us who did not, you feel like you're missing something and you don't want to speak your ignorance, and then the imposter syndrome really comes in, because it's like, oh, now they know that I don't know about any of this stuff, right? But then it just perpetuates, and it's not helpful. So I think one of the great things about this book is literally talking about it, breaking the taboo. Like, yes, these women are having these same conversations. These women have the same insecurities, or maybe not. This woman is confident about it, and still some of that confidence too. And I think we need it, and that's what's so incredible about this book, Rebecca. It's so necessary and timely.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you like it. I love this book. It's my 5th collection. I think it's my 9th or 10th book. And it's got nice energy. When you put out a book or you do a piece of work, as you know, you never know what the feedback's going to be. You never know how it's going to operate and connect with the zeitgeist, and whether or not people need it and are looking for it, and it can be of value. But for some reason, and of course, I don't look at numbers, I don't look at reviews very much, but I feel the energy around it is quite powerful. It's like people have been holding their stories about money and are feeling inspired and encouraged by this book, and I feel a lot of gratitude, because in addition to thinking about financial resources, as all of us are doing, we are all of us thinking about our sort of psycho-spiritual and energy resources, and why we do the work that we do, because we put so much into it. And it's the same idea of like return on investment. It's like you invest money into something and you want a return. And for me, I invest a lot of energy into all of my work, and the return is what feeds me and feels and feels good. So to feel and hear that the book is working for people is like, it's like, it's like I bought, Apple 50 years, 20 years ago, and now I'm a billionaire. It's like, that's part of the conversation, I think, about wealth, that wealth is not just material, but it is a sense of spending your internal capital in a smart way, so that the return benefits you and the community. And I think so many of the writers in the book, and I was really happy to see this, that women in particular are thinking this way. Each of the writers finds a way to talk about money that speaks to what it's a stand-in for, or what it represents that they want to sort of enhance in their lives. Like, so for Nina Revoir, who's dealing with air, she becomes an activist on behalf of people who are in communities that are struggling with these issues. People writing about becoming a widow like Marnie. She's giving real tools. How can you navigate that space so that you feel more empowered as a woman who's trying to, all of a sudden figure out how to get passwords and life insurance policies, and there aren't any, and you got to go to the food bank, and all that stuff. That each of the writers are wanting to give the reader something more than just financial savvy. They're wanting to give a gift of insight, a gift of redefining the power of money and what it can do in the world, And I think that's very different possibly from a book about men and money. I'm not sure that every single writer in a book, a collection like this, would be as focused on these bigger picture, of not just healing my wound, not just making money and being empowered, but how am I going to now use this money to fight hypercapitalism, to fight, endemic racism, to fight oppression and incredible class discrepancy, to really transform the culture that I'm living in, and every single writer in this book, I didn't ask them to do it. They all came to the table writing about these bigger themes. And I found that so moving. And of course, in the middle of this war and in the middle of all the wars that we find ourselves in right now, you can't help but think, and I don't have any fantasies about women being better than men inherently. I just don't. But when you think about, especially after this book, what women would be doing with this kind of money, like let's look at Putin, for instance, and the trillions of dollars, what would we be doing differently? What would we be doing differently? And I think about the Scandinavian countries and what they do and how they prioritize money to support families as opposed to businesses like we do. I think about, so many different cultures in which family is defined, my brother's wife's sister's cousin's child is as close to me as my own sibling. And money then flows through the community, through the family that is huge, to support the whole, not just the three of us inside this little apartment, but this whole community that's like a village that then, empowers the whole, a lot more people, so I think that that's one of the things, the great rewards of this book is just exploring the visions and the dreams of the writers for how to use money differently in a more powerful way for all,
Before we start answering viewer questions, are y'all skeptical about like the new money topics like NFTs, for example? As a Black woman, so my grandmother, who used to sit me down to do ledgers with her, I think starting in 3rd grade. So I knew all of my parents. I knew how much my grandfather made. I knew he made time and a half for overtime. So when I was like, I'm in 7th grade, I want to study abroad. And my mother would be like, okay, we're going to make this happen. But Marvin's going to be at General Motors. And this is how much extra time it takes for you to go to England. So I was very involved. I remember when debit cards came out, Margaret was like, I don't know about this swipe or this auto debit. And eventually, but a decade at least later than everyone else, she was like, all right, I guess I can use this thing where my money is not tangible and I'm not balancing my own checkbook. I am now hitting that wall with crypto and NFT, whereas I've been an early adopter all my life, and now all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know, y'all. But then I'm like, am I missing a boat? Is this a boat I'm supposed to be on? Because it's supposed to be, this wave of wealth, like when the stock market launched. So how are y'all feeling about it?
Listen, and it's so funny when you mentioned your grandmother, I thought like, oh my God, did she get caught up in this? Because I promise you, my mother called me about a month ago and was like, so what's all this crypto about? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, my friend called and said that if I sign up for something, and I was like, nope, that's not it. Mm-mm. I was like, you don't have to sign up for anything. And then what she was explaining to me was an obvious pyramid scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, absolutely not. And that is my biggest fear, is that folks who are complete Luddites are being pulled into these schemes around crypto, right? Where they can make quote unquote fast money. And people have already been like super, there was like an NBC show about people getting got for hundreds of thousands of dollars in this whole thing. So that really, really frightens me when it comes to our like grown folks. For me, you know me, Jonica, like I'm just like, nope. I can't get it. I'm not going to do it until either Jonica does it but my husband is in IT. My husband's in IT. So he has like played around with it a tiny bit, but not in some like, super, super big way. Because again, risk, right, is something that I think for people of color, we hedge in a different way, because we know, like, we don't put our trust in institutions. So I definitely can't put my trust into something where I cannot show up at the brick and mortar place and be like, where is, you know what I mean? Like, our great grandparents were still putting money under their mattresses. It took them time to even trust a bank. And now you're telling me not to even trust, exactly, the cloud. Not me.
I'm with you. I think it's really interesting. I mean, I don't know if it's because of the biracial thing. Well, I don't know what it is, but both of my parents, because of their backgrounds, are like, it's too risky. I don't know what it is. It's a scheme. I don't, they are very anti. But my brother, who is not half Black and who is, deep in his beautiful self, is all about crypto. And I mean, not all about it, but he's much more comfortable wading in the risk of crypto. Now, obviously, he's got a level of privilege that we don't have. And so it's a very different situation. But his wading in it has made me really think about wading in it. And so I have, and also, as we talked about way back in our last conversation, Black people on this technology trip, we are early adapters. So early adapters. We're early adapters and early adopters. We're both of those things. So anyway, and it's very interesting how we move in the tech space. And I think that there's a part of me that, on that side, if I can split myself into sides, is really interested and is like, I don't want to miss this. Like, I remember telling my father back in 1991, you need to buy stocks in Apple and we will be set for like, don't even trip. And he was like, oh no, I don't know about this company, that I blah, blah, blah. I'm like, really? Same thing with Amazon, same thing with Whole Foods. He was just, And I do have this feeling of, I want to be open, I want to be smart, I want to be safe, but I don't want to make the wrong decision. So I have decided that I'm going to do a little bit, and I'm going to try to find the safest way to do a little bit, and I'm going to watch it. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that is right. And I think what I'm going to do is really talk to my son about it and get him involved and be like, you know what, honey, I want you to go research and I want you to come back and tell me what you think we should do, how much we should do. We can start with $1,000, $500, $25, whatever, let you tell me, because he's very risk averse. It's very interesting. And I want to kind of push him a little bit, but I also want to respect where he's at. So I think I might make it like a project in between us, a conversation, because I don't want to be so fearful, because I think that has to do with our trauma as well, and
Absolutely.
and I want to be able to act from a place that's not fear. And I think that's very important with financial situations, that we're able to do that. So I think it's to do it smartly. So Jonica, what are you doing? Are you out there getting rich off
I'm not getting rich.
You're not
I'm not
getting
getting
rich?
rich at all. But I do have. I realize I'm actually not motivated by money. So that's never the play that's going to get me into anything. So I bought Ethereum because I wanted Kilo Quiche dropped her first NFT a year ago. So there was specifically a Black woman artist that it was in most. This is just to me. Most NFT art does nothing for me, like nothing. So I'm constantly waiting for the Black woman artist Renee Cox dropped her first, which it was out of my range though, but she dropped an NFT last week. Tiana McKinnon, who's an artist based in Pennsylvania, had some work. But what's interesting, when she dropped NFTs, what I actually did was bought a physical work of hers. And through her NFT plays, the value of my physical work went up. So that's the only thing that's currently piquing my curiosity. Is I'm interested, and there are publishing NFT platforms now,
right?
Where poets and writers are playing around. So I am watching that space to see what happens. But I'm more it's more the cultural moment that I don't want to miss. It's that I've just realized I'm innately not, I need money. Obviously, I like to travel. I like bags and nice things. Absolutely. But that's just not like my, primary motivation. But I am interested in what Black women are doing and will eventually do in this new age space. It's definitely happening. I mean, it's happening. It's not going to go away. So I'm listening. It has my attention now.
Yes, and look at you. I mean, that was the perfect answer that speaks so much to the book. I mean, if you, I wish you had written that piece for the book. I should have come and made you with it. But the way that you're approaching crypto is about art, community, Black women, creativity, and this kind of dynamic interplay between that space and the real space. I mean, that is so classic Women and Money. We come at things very differently. And so obviously I want to follow you. I think you need to be writing about that and talking about that. And I want to learn from you because you're absolutely right. That's exactly
what did I say. If Jonica does it,
honey,
then I will be. And I mean, that's the thing. I think that's the thing that's so smart about the book as well, Rebecca. It's like hearing something from another. What I'm not going to do is follow some crypto bro. Never.
Right.
No, never.
That's never going to happen. Right. But I will, if I see someone that I trust and know that person, know Jonica very well, if it's someone that I trust, who I know has the same, guardrails that I think I would have, then I'm thinking, okay, this makes sense for me. Because some, when Paris Hilton is on Jimmy Fallon showing us a picture of like an ape eating a banana or whatever it was that they had both bought, I'm just thinking, that's not for me.
Not wrong with that. Yeah,
that's not for me. Because those people don't have the same nothing I do, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. We don't have
if a person of color, a woman of color is sort of paving the way in a way that I trust, then definitely. Because I think you're right, Rebecca. It's, as my husband would say, scare money don't make no money, right? Like, you got to be, and that's what I also, I'm a culture writer. I love that about pop culture, especially how Black women, female rappers are talking about money. Megan Thee Stallion, who I am obsessed with, has a line, and she says, you better learn all this money got to come through me. You know what I mean? I run it. And that,
I run that shit. I love it.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's got to come through you. And it's not just, secure the bag is one of the things that is like the big things that folks are talking about now. And it's just understanding, Jay-Z said, I'm a businessman, right? And I think that women, especially women in hip hop, are recognizing that as well and talking about it.
Yes.
And it again, as we're talking about who you sort of follow and who you see, and people being open and honest about money and how they're spending it and how they're securing it for themselves. I think we are absolutely in a moment right now when it comes to that, and women of color.
Yes. Okay, so Jonathan,
we got some comments on the screen. So Petty Rubble, we're with you. Petty Rubble said they're skeptical too. So yes, we're with you on that.
Yes, we have been bamboozled, honey, when it comes to money. I think you're right. Our hesitancy is valid. But I think we can follow some brilliant women like Jonica, and I want her to actually tell all of us what we should be doing, because she's going to figure it out. I mean, that's the thing about Black women. As I said, that my son understands, and I understand, we will figure some shit out. Mm-hmm. So once she figures it out, I'm going to call her, tell us what to do. So yeah.
And I have a friend, Jason Mowat, who's the founder and CEO of Trap Karaoke. And he day traded his way through University of Maryland. So Jason's always been this person.
Wow.
And Jason started talking to me about crypto. I should have listened, to be honest, well over 5 years ago.
Yes.
And so he has me in this group chat. It is a little overwhelming because I don't be, they're basically Black tech bros. Mm-hmm. So most of the group chat, there might be a few women in there. But he's the person that has, I've listened 5 years later. Mm-hmm. But he's like, no, just join the chat. So at least you have the information, what you choose to do with it, because we all get to choose what games we want to play, as he always says. Mm-hmm. And then I take the information and then I, sit with it, meditate on it, travel with it. And then I, take it through my Black woman filter. Mm-hmm. And then I'm now choosing how I want to apply it. I'm never going to be as aggressive as the guys in that group are, because they are all really motivated by wealth.
Right.
And that's just not what gets me up ever, really. If I have enough to be stable, I'm good. I don't that's about my dopamine isn't going to rise the way that theirs is.
Yes.
So I'm now trying to tie it to things that I am motivated by, which is culture, Black women's cultural contributions. And so I'm like, okay, if I can link these two things together, that'll at least get one of my legs in the game. But then the other thing is what kind of keeps me accountable, so that I don't become this toxic, hoarding money, driving the market person. Because I don't know, that stuff just feels very icky to me.
Yes.
Because the thing with stocks is they are legalized Ponzi schemes. And so the only way people make money is someone has to lose money. That's just it. And that piece of it, so I'm like, okay, I can make some money in this game. But I'm constantly, Rebecca Ann Wilcox, who's a doctoral student at Princeton Seminary, she did this audio room on Clubhouse a year or so ago, where she asked each of us, we had to name a desire. It could be you want a private plane, or you want to, travel the world, not work, and then think about how that desire ultimately leads to Black death for someone else. It's a question now. Every time I want something, I now am like, I probably already was thinking about it, but much, much deeper, really drawing a line to who below me is paying the cost for me to have this thing I want, to have this experience that I want. Or, the whole internet right now is obsessed with Black luxury. The kid is like, well, who's that at the expense of? And I think that's a question Black women and then women of color, we are probably more likely to pose that question earlier on, before there's a lot of destruction and loss. And so that is how I'm approaching, even as I'm trying to secure myself, I'm still thinking about what that means for other people. I'm moving into my grandparents' home that I inherited. If I make it too nice, is that going to drive my neighbor's property tax up? Because everyone else in the neighborhood is still working class. So I'm going to be the prodigal daughter left, returns to the hood. And like, what am I saying? What does that mean? Because even moving back in the house, my motivation is, oh, I won't have a mortgage. I'll have a home. I put a little money in it. And that in and of itself is a privilege.
Yes.
And I'm now, okay, well, how can I contribute to the community and not just be here, living my life flying in and out, which is, what probably my initial, plan was. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Oh my God. AJ Verdell. Hey, beautiful woman. Yes, we all used to be money. And so the psychological tragedy reality goes deep. You are so right. You are so right. As Black women, we all used to literally be the currency bought and sold. We were money. And we were wealth in our beings, and how to hold that and transform that and honor that is very deep. And knowing that us being literal currency is part of what built this country, and to, after all that we've given, of our bodies and our brilliance and our work, for me, I was thinking about Ketanji, how happy I am for her to be Supreme Court Justice. But I also thought about how much every Black woman, for hundreds of years now, has had to give in order for us to have this moment. And the exchange just seems so unfair. It's so unjust. We, one for millions, but still, yay. But yes, AJ, I'm so glad you brought that up, and I love you, and I love your work, and I can't wait to read some new work. And you've been writing about this for a long time, so bless you for being here with us. Any other comments? Yes.
Yeah. But what's so funny about that, the idea that kids, they do what we do, not what we say, and that permeates into everything about how we try to teach kids. What's so weird about money now is like my children never see money, right? Like literally never actually see money or currency.
Yeah.
There was an internet meme going around the other day that was so funny, and it was a mom who was like, I have to get $5 for my kid's Girl Scout something or other. She's like, and I've never been so stressed in my entire life trying to get $5. Like literally, like I never have actual money. Sally, my oldest, 2 teeth came out recently, and I was like, we need money for the tooth fairy. Where do we get these dollars? She actually never touches or sees money. It's very, very rare. So her concept of it, I think, is her concept is just, it's in the ether. It just always exists. It just surrounds her on a regular basis, right? Like whenever we pass the store, she's like, oh, can we get this? Can we get that? We were at the dollar store the other day. And again, I talk about like my own trauma. And I was telling my husband, I was like, oh, she wanted this toy, but I told her we weren't there for that. And he was like, but you were at the dollar store. Like, what it cost you $1.50. Like, but we weren't there for that. Like it's just this weird push and pull. But she honestly has never, it's so rare for her actually to have her hands on money that she doesn't even think of it as something that you like exchange. She just thinks we'll get it. She sees, poof, I saw something on the internet and poof, it arrived at our house the next day. Oh, I need those shoes and I showed daddy, poof, we got them 2 days later in front of the house, right? And so it's that, I didn't grow up like that. None of us grew up like that.
None of us grew up like that.
These kids are just steeped in just this instant gratification. And now in the pandemic, I mean, almost all my younger daughter's life, half Sally's life, like she doesn't even see mommy getting up and going somewhere.
Right.
Like she just sees us all existing in this house, and yet and here are the groceries that show up, and here's this, and here's that. It's just like this concept of working and getting up and going somewhere that I saw my mother do every single day, and I'm sure you all saw your mothers do every single day. That doesn't even play into how she thinks about money either. So it is just this whole reimagining. And as the other commenter said, the fact that we used to be money, I mean, just as I sit and think about just capitalism in general, like, is this the best way to raise our children, right? Like, my idea of her being successful, I have these conversations with myself as well. Like, how am I pouring into her to be successful? Is it so she can go somewhere to make a lot of money someday, you know?
Right.
And as Jonica
Right.
says, like, that's not what wakes her up in the morning, making money. And I don't want that to be what wakes my kid up every morning, is making money. I want her to feel like she's, you know, a content person living a life, you know? So it's all of that is wrapped up
Yes.
in how I talk about it, or how we try to be examples of what being good stewards of money is, what that looks like. And it's hard because it's not such a tangible thing anymore for anybody, any of us, really. Like, how
Yes.
often do you literally touch a dollar bill?
Yes, very rarely.
Never.
And
Rarely.
my son, the other day we were at In-N-Out because after track practice he was hungry, and I put my card in the thing, and he was like, "Where does you just keep putting your card in the thing? Like, where does the money come from? You know, like what? How does that even work?" And I was like, "Honey, when you see mommy sitting down, I mean, I didn't say mommy because he's 17, but you know, I work every day. I work every day, and the money that I make goes into a place, and then it goes out on the card, and then some has to come back. Like, I have to literally be very clear about that, you know, with him, because I agree with you. There's something about the absence of actually seeing it that makes it so abstract, you know. And this issue of wanting them to be able to do what they love and not chase money, I think as parents, as Black parents in particular, it's so hard to hold that because we know so much is stacked against them, and we know that they have to they have to go make money. You know, they have to have those cards, you know, like, you know, he's like, I'm not interested in Ivy League schools, and I'm not interested in being in places that are all about status. I'm like, yeah, okay. But like, as a Black man, the more of those pieces of power that you have that declare to the world that you know, belong, those are important, you know, and I support you not needing them, and I support you not wanting them, but like, you have to understand how this works, how those are currency, you know, and you need them. So, and he's like, but I just want to be, you know, da, da, da. And I'm like, okay, but it's complicated, you know, it's a luxury that we may or may not have for you to just, you know. So I think a lot about that. Okay, wait, we have another comment. Do you think that do you think that some of that has intent on the file? No, comes from getting access after some.
Well, for me, I had the information a long time ago. It's more of a question. I don't actually believe in like the foundational elements of what these systems are built on. And so that's my hesitancy. I'm fluent in NFTs and crypto. I understand all of it. It's just that on one level, I don't care. I'm like, the world is ending, right? Most of the day, I'm like, no one's talking about climate change. The South will be uninhabitable by human temperature standards as early as 2070. So who the hell is this generational wealth for? Your kids can't even, like, people paying for money for houses down here, and this idea of a reverse migration. And I'm like, so we want people to migrate to the South for cheap real estate, but in 2 generations, everybody has to go. And so it's very, very hard for me to devote like mental capacity and definitely like emotional capacity to things that I feel like we're having the wrong conversations right now. Like, we should be having more like apocalyptic conversations because, you know, other than the super wealthy who can maybe, you know, get on some apparatus and jolt up out of this thing, you know, most of us are really going to have to go back to some like bare bones, like cellular memory on how do you actually survive, right? Like, we're coming up on another 08, you know, Goldman and the 2 major banks that usually cause a recession first. We got about 18 months, y'all. And then no one is addressing the climate. So it's actually just really hard for me to take money seriously when I'm like, we're all gonna melt. Like, Like, what are we really talking about here? You know,
Yes.
so that's my apprehension. I get the information, and everyone on this screen, like, I think if we wanted access to the information, it really is my apprehension. It's like, I don't know if this is where I should be devoting, like, my time and my interest, and is this actually good for humanity? I don't think so.
Unclear.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
I think
unclear,
that's
but
so
you
deep.
know.
Yeah, it's like the double consciousness, you know, what we're having to hold. I don't think everybody's holding this idea of, like, you know, it's important, and yet in the scope of things, it may not be important at all. I should be teaching my son how to grow food, you know, as opposed to figuring out the stock market. You know what I'm saying? Because the reality is not what we think it's going to be. And so trying to hold this sense of not knowing what's going to happen and trying to prepare ourselves on all the different levels is top of mind, you know. So I think you're right, and it's conscious people who have experienced the range of what can happen, who are thinking that way, you know, often us. So yes, honey, follow Jonica. I'm telling you, I'm following Jonica. You see, years, and I'm right
Oh,
here with
thank you.
her.
Thank you.
So how are we doing, y'all? Uh-oh. I would love for Miss Walker to hospital with their mothers. Yes, I'm going to do that. I promise. I'll do that. I don't know where. I'll bring Jonica and Helena to do it with me. Because I think that's a really important conversation, you know, and I've lived it on so many levels. You know, I've had challenges with my mother. I've healed with my mother. I'm so close to my mother. I mean, you know, and Black women and our mothers, honey, it's real. I mean, everybody and their mothers, but I think that we carry our own specific stories and narratives that really do deserve more space, you know, and excavation. So thank you for that invitation, and I'll do my best. All right, I promise.
I agree wholeheartedly. I will be there. This is
Yes, there we go. I'm sorry. There we go. Set it up.
That is the book that is coming
Wait, show that again so I can see it. Why don't I have one? Okay, look at that. Yeah,
and that comes out in August. And I mean, I have a whole chapter on my relationship with my mother, where I quote your mother, and I think she says, you know, the only way for us to, and I'm totally paraphrasing her now, the only way for us to really know ourselves is to know our mother's names. And as you say, like, we have gone through, my mother and I, and right now we're at a, like, kind of here, because, like, when you have kids, there's, like, the weird thing. You know, she don't call to talk to you no more. She just called to talk to the babies. And we're there right now. But we, you know, our relationship has gone so many ways, and so much of it was tied up in, you know, the somewhat chaotic ways in which I was raised, that at the time as a child, when you think, you know, when I was a child, I thought like a child, it was adventurous and fun. And, you know, this is this journey we're going on together. And then you become older and you think, like, oh girl, that was dangerous.
Right. I don't know about that. Right.
I've been doing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And so it's, when you grow into your womanhood and you start to question a lot of the things, it's really difficult. And we've all had this conversation. Jonica talked about this at the beginning. When you now become a caretaker, right? You become a caretaker for your parents. My mother she had a medical issue I write about in the book, and she was in the hospital. We thought she was in the ICU for 3 months. And I had just gotten married, and suddenly everyone's like, well, what are we going to do? And I was like, who are you asking? Like, I'm in charge of this now? What? And it's, you know, and that's just continued. And you're sandwiched. We are the sandwich generation. You're sandwiched between aging parents and young kids, and trying to figure out who gets your attention when, and do you ever get your own attention? There's so much wrapped up in that. And I think what's so the specificity of Black women that you talked about, Rebecca, is that, you know, our mothers were, you know, they were so no nonsense. All of our mothers were so no nonsense in many ways, to where she was the authority, right? When it came to my mom, she was the authority. That is who I gave, you know, my respect to, and all of those things. So then when it flips a little bit, the two of you are now in different spaces, and those new roles are difficult. Those new roles are really difficult, and nobody talks about that transition. And it's tough. I watched my grandmother and great grandmother go through it. My grandma, and take care of each other. I talk about that in the book, how much we take care of each other. You know, my grandmother was 70, taking care of her mother who was 90 with Alzheimer's. You know, but that's what we do always. And their roles were completely flipped. You know, now you have someone who literally can't remember who you are, and you're in charge of, you know, making her food every day, and she's yelling at you about it. But at the end of the day, my grandmother would be like, that's my mama. She ain't going nowhere. I'm gonna take care of her forever, you know. And that's the legacy that we come from. And it's deep, it's important, it's amazing. But woo child, it's a lot.
It's more than an ocean. Really. I can't wait to read your book. When talk to us. When is it? Tell me, when can I have one?
You can pre-order it now.
Okay, I'm pre-ordering it.
It comes out August, I want to say August 23rd.
Okay, that's okay. I'll pre-order it. You don't have to tell me the day.
The Mamas, what I learned about kids, class, and race from Moms Not Like Me, and really trying to investigate, you know, all the things that we've been talking about class, and also bringing race into it, and, you know, generational trauma and legacy. But then also, you know, it's me, so it's funny too.
I know, girl. You keep it going. You keep us laughing.
All of that. It's all of that, and we'll have more conversations when it comes. But I'm so glad to be here, Rebecca, and thank you for inviting me. I love chatting with you.
I love chatting with y'all. You know, I think it's so nice to have continuity in this relationship. You know, we have not shared physical space in a long time, and it's rare, but we share a psychic, cultural, intellectual, emotional landscape that I really cherish and treasure. And I love you both. I respect you both so much for the work you're doing. And I want to keep talking to you because I learned so much from you, and I you know, we need each other. So I'm happy that you showed up, and that we keep showing up, you know, and I'm always going to show up for y'all. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
It's real.
This is real. And I love Busboys. That's like coming of age spot in DC. Yeah, it's
Busboys,
like nothing better to me.
Y'all are everything. Wait, we can't hear you, sweetheart.
You're muted.
My mistake. Sorry. I said that seemed like a good time to pop back up and say hello.
Hello.
Thank you guys so much. I truly, truly enjoyed that. I have about 100 questions for you myself, so you might get an email from me in the future.
Send it on.
Very enlightening.
Good.
Thank you so much. Very, very enlightening, very interesting. And I hope that everybody else enjoyed it as much as I did. We had some great comments and questions as well. Thank you for the audience for participating. And yeah, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. And it was really great to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Stay well, stay safe. Okay.